Her feet hit the concrete before the beat dropped. That was the thing about Zaria Cole that nobody who watched her ever forgot. She didn't wait for music to tell her when to start. She felt rhythm before it arrived. The way certain people feel rain before clouds break. On this particular Friday night in the Bupyeong Underground Market, with the crowd still filing in and the speakers still warming up, Zaria was already moving. Not performing. Moving. There's a difference most people never learn to see. If you already feel the tension building, make sure you like this video, subscribe and mention the country you are watching from. This story only gets deeper from here. And trust me, by the end, you'll have a lot to say in the comments. Performing is for an audience. What Zaria did came from somewhere the audience was only permitted to witness. Her arms lifted and the air changed quality. Her feet found angles the floor didn't know it had. The bass finally caught up to her at the 8 count. And when it did, the crowd, mid-conversation, mid-bite, mid-everything, stopped. Just stopped. Phones came up. Bodies turned. A teenage boy near the back stood on a bench to see better and nobody told him down. The Bupyeong Underground Market does not go quiet easily. It went quiet now, not silent. The music still thundered. But that particular human quiet that happens when a room full of people collectively decides something in front of them matters more than anything inside their own heads. Zaria moved through the cipher like the space had been designed specifically for her. She didn't look at the crowd. She never looked at the crowd. That was the second thing people never forgot. She was in conversation with something they couldn't see. The applause came in waves. First from the people closest who recovered first, then from further back, then from people who hadn't even been watching but heard the first 2 waves and turned around. 3 tears of recognition. That's how you know something is real. Then Dae-young stepped into the cipher. 3 of them, matching black hoodies, silver lettering, the kind of coordinated entrance that announced itself as rehearsed. Dae-young had owned this corner of the plaza for 2 years. He was talented, connected, and accustomed to a particular deference the underground market had been giving him long enough that he'd started confusing it with a right. He didn't say much. He tilted his head toward the far edge of the plaza, the universal signal, and waited for Zaria to read it and move. She read it correctly. She didn't move. The crowd held its breath again. Dae-young stepped closer. He said something in Korean. Low, firm, the kind of voice that expected to end conversations rather than start them. His crew shifted behind him. Not violent. Just present. The way a wall becomes present when you walk toward it. Zaria stood exactly where she was. She looked at Dae-young with the expression of someone who has been in this room before. Different city, different language, same room, and came out the other side each time. I'm not moving, she said. The quiet that followed was charged. The crowd leaning forward again, but differently. Not with joy but with the electric tension of a moment that could go several directions at once. Dae-young held his position for 5 full seconds. Then he stepped back. The plaza erupted. And at the far end of the upper walkway, behind the tinted glass of a black sedan parked at a precise angle for the past 14 minutes, Min Joon-Kyung watched. He had not planned to be here. He had a 9 o'clock with the Yongsan contact, a report to review, 3 calls to return. He was here because Han-suk had taken an alternate route through Bupyeong and some peripheral catch of movement through the car window, had made him say stop. Just that. Stop. Han-suk had stopped. And Min had been watching ever since. He was not a man who watched things. He assessed them. He cataloged them. He extracted what was useful and discarded the rest with the efficiency of someone for whom time was finite and carefully managed. He did not simply watch. But that is exactly what he was doing. She had just faced down 3 men in front of 200 people and made them blink first. Without raising her voice, without a single backup, and without fear. Not the absence of fear. Something more interesting. The full presence of it. Acknowledged and set aside. The way you set down a bag you've been carrying so both hands are free for what comes next. He had met dangerous people his entire adult life. He had been one, by most definitions, since he was 19. He had never seen anything like this. Han-suk's voice came from the front seat, carefully neutral. The Yongsan meeting is in 40 minutes, sir. Silence. Sir. Push it to 9, Min said. His voice was its usual register, even unhurried. But his eyes didn't move from the plaza below. Han-suk sent the message without arguing. He was experienced enough to know when arguing was available to him, and when it was not. He did, however, take one long look in the rearview mirror. At Min's face. At the quality of stillness there that was different. Just slightly, just perceptibly, from his usual stillness. He noted the difference and said nothing. Below, Zaria accepted the crowd's applause the way a person accepts weather. Aware of it, unbothered by it, already thinking about what came next. Min watched her walk toward the far corridor, unhurried, like a person who understood the world would wait. Something in his chest rearranged itself without his permission, quietly, the way furniture moves in a house when no one is home. He didn't name it. He looked at the empty space where she had been standing and stayed with the looking longer than he had stayed with anything in recent memory. Han-suk, at a red light 3 minutes later, studied the rearview mirror once more. Min's jaw was no longer tight. It was something closer to open. Something closer to a man who had just seen something he had no category for yet. Han-suk filed it. Said nothing. Drove. If this story already has you, subscribe right now. Because where this goes next is not where you think it goes. And you don't want to miss a second of it. Min didn't go back to the plaza the next night. He told himself it was because he had no reason to. 3 meetings, a port district negotiation, a supply route to reroute before Thursday. He was busy. Business was a current he rode so consistently that stillness had become foreign. But at 10:47, when the last meeting ended and Han-suk was driving them home, Min said, "Take the Bupyeong route." Han-suk paused exactly 1 beat. "That adds 12 minutes. "I know." Han-suk turned without another word. He slowed naturally as they passed the plaza entrance, where sound and light still leaked past midnight like the place refused to sleep. Min looked out the window. She was there. Same space, different crowd, same gravitational quality. He said nothing the entire way home. The following night, he took the Bupyeong route again. Han-suk didn't comment. The morning after, setting coffee on the desk, he allowed himself one careful question. "Do you want me to find out who she is?" Min looked up from the document in his hands. "I already know," he said, and went back to reading. Her name was Zaria Cole. 26. Atlanta. Cultural initiative called Pulse Unchained. Building bridges between Black American movement culture and Korean street performance. Not the director, not the spokesperson. Simply the one who showed up 4 nights a week and danced until the crowd had nothing left. Then danced a little more. Wednesday workshops at a borrowed community hall. A record of arguing, politely but persistently, with every venue coordinator who tried to give her less space than she needed. He read it all and sat with it the way he sat with intelligence reports. What he found beneath the surface details was simpler and more complicated than any report. She had given up a great deal to be here. A contract, a relationship, an easier version of her life. She had chosen Incheon and a borrowed hall, and a plaza that didn't always welcome her, because the work mattered more than the comfort of it. Min understood that logic exactly. He had lived by a version of it his whole adult life. He did not examine that parallel for long. Examining it felt like standing too close to something bright. Han-suk entered on the second knock, and sat across from Min without being invited. 6 years earned him that. "The gangbuk shipment cleared," he said. Hanul moved 2 people into Yonsu this morning. Quietly. Min processed it. Filed it. You've been distracted for 4 days, Han-suk said. I've known you long enough to say that out loud. The silence between them was honest, the only kind either trusted. I'm thinking, Min said. You think the same way you do everything else. Clean. Noresid. This is different. Han-suk set down his cup. She's a civilian. American. Connected to a cultural program. Whatever this is, it isn't strategic. Did I say it was? You didn't have to. Han-suk looked at him steadily. In 6 years I've watched you walk into rooms that would unmake most people and walk out having seen every angle before anyone else found the first one. I've never watched you take the long route home 3 nights in a row without saying why. I'll be fine, Min said. At the door, Han-suk paused. When he turned back, his face carried the weight of 6 years. Whoever she is, she's already further inside than anyone has been in a long time. Know what that means before it means something you didn't plan for. He left. Min stood and walked to the window. The city below, breathing, indifferent, asking nothing except competence. He had always found that indifference reassuring. He stood there until the reassurance arrived, which took longer than usual. He told himself he was going to the plaza because it was on the way. He told himself this with full knowledge that it was not on the way to anywhere he needed to be. He found Zaria beside the cipher, not on it, sitting on a low concrete barrier, earphones around her neck, phone in hand, completely at home in a space that had tried to make her feel otherwise. She didn't look up immediately. When she did, she took him in with the unhurried accuracy of someone who catalogs quickly and almost never revises. You were here the other night, she said. In the sedan. He hadn't expected that. He showed nothing while the surprise settled. Yes, he said. Upper walkway. Left angle. Stated like coordinates. I see everything in a room. I know, he said. And meant it as a compliment. What do you want? She asked. Direct. No preamble. It was the most unguarded question anyone had put to him in recent memory. In a professional world that wrapped everything in layers of careful indirection, it landed with the clean impact of something simply sharp. I don't know, he said. She looked at him with careful, genuine attention. Not warmth, not hostility, but a third thing. That's either the most honest thing you could have said, or the most dangerous. Both probably, he said. Something moved in the corner of her mouth. If you're this off balance just standing here, imagine the dance floor. He felt it land somewhere it had no business landing. I don't dance, he said. I know, she said, in a tone that found this mildly unfortunate. He stayed 12 more minutes. She didn't perform for him, didn't soften, didn't adjust a single thing about herself in response to his presence. She simply continued being exactly what she was. He left without having said anything particularly meaningful, and thought about her the entire way home, which was the most meaningful thing of all. The gift started the way everything Min did started, quietly, precisely, without fingerprints. Not flowers. He knew better. He suspected Zaria would receive flowers the way certain people receive unsolicited advice, with full awareness of the intent and a complete absence of obligation to appreciate it. Instead, he made things easier. The community hall where she ran Wednesday workshops had a broken heating unit the building manager had ignored for 2 months. On a Tuesday it was fixed. No note. No invoice rerouted to Zaria. The building manager received a call from a number he didn't recognize, and suddenly discovered an urgent professional interest in HVAC repair. 3 days later, a dance collective quietly pressuring Pulse Unchained's venue permits found its own applications buried under bureaucratic complexity that would take considerable time to resolve. Zaria noticed neither thing specifically, but she felt the shape of them. The way a room feels different after furniture has been moved, even if you can't immediately say what changed. She was outside the community hall after Wednesday's session when Hyunji, 17 and possessed of an extraordinary talent for saying exactly what everyone else was merely thinking, appeared at her shoulder. "The heat works," Hyunji said. "I noticed," Zaria said. "It didn't last week." "I noticed that too." Hyunji looked at her sideways. "Someone fixed it for you." Zaria looked at the building. "Someone fixed it," she said carefully. "The for you part is what I'm thinking about." Min came back to the plaza 3 nights later. She was waiting, not positioned, not performing the wait, but present in a way that said she had been expecting him and had things to say. He arrived with the same quality he always carried. A kind of negative space in a crowd. A man around whom other people unconsciously reorganized themselves without knowing why. He stopped in front of her. "The heating," she said before he could speak. He didn't pretend. "The hall was cold." "I didn't ask for that." "No," he agreed, and offered nothing further. She folded her arms, thinking, not closing off. The permit situation. "I don't know what you're referring to," he said, in the tone of someone who knew precisely what was being referred to. She made a sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite disapproval, somewhere exactly between the two. Then, "Here's the thing about help that comes without being asked. It's not really about the person being helped. It's about the person doing the helping." "That's an accurate observation," he said. "Don't do it again without asking," she said. "I don't care how useful it is. My space is mine. And if I ask, then I'll say yes or no and you'll respect it either way. No isn't a negotiation." It was not warmth. It was a boundary, drawn cleanly in good light, so there was no possibility of confusion. But from her it felt like a form of respect. She was treating him as someone capable of understanding and honoring a standard. In his world, that was rarer than most people knew. "Fair," he said. She nodded once. Something had just been agreed to. Not romance, not friendship. Something more foundational than either. Rules. And rules meant continuation. Han-suk was at the car. "She turned you down." "She set terms," Min said. Han-suk looked at him. "What's the difference?" "Terms mean there's something to negotiate toward," Min said, opening the door. "Being turned down means there isn't." Han-suk stood outside a moment before walking to the driver's side. Thinking but not saying. This man is already gone. The following 10 days were professionally immaculate and internally chaotic in ways that showed on no external surface. Every meeting clean. Every decision exact. Every interaction with Meridian's inner mechanics as precise as it had always been. But on 3 separate evenings, Han-suk found the sedan parked outside the Bupyeong Underground Market at 11. Engine running. Min in the back. Not going in. Just watching the entrance like a man who had made a rule for himself and was deciding each night, freshly, whether to keep it. He kept it each time. But keeping it cost something that not keeping it would have cost differently, and Han-suk understood that distinction mattered even before he could see what it would mean. On a Thursday morning over coffee. "The version of you I've worked beside for 6 years needs to come back fully," Han-suk said. "He's here," Min said. "Parts of him. The rest is parked outside a plaza at 11 o'clock. Han-suk paused. "Hanol is watching you the way animals watch something that used to be steady and has started to wobble." Min looked at him. Note taken. What Han-suk didn't know was that Min had been taking that note every night in the parked sedan, running the precise calculation of what he was doing, what it was costing, what it would continue to cost. He was not blind to any of it. He was simply, for the first time in his adult life, unable to make himself stop. That was the part he couldn't say out loud. Not because he didn't trust Han-suk. Because naming it required a word he hadn't caught yet. The word was close. He could feel its shape in the dark. He just hadn't caught it. The battle happened on a Thursday and changed everything. Not scheduled. Not announced. These events generated themselves in the plaza the way weather generates itself, out of accumulated pressure with nowhere else to go. By 8 o'clock the density of the crowd made the air feel different, thicker, charged. The cipher was electric. Matchup after matchup. Energy ratcheting upward like something being wound tight. Zaria was not competing. She was in the cipher the way a musician sits in on a session, contributing, elevating, making the whole thing better without taking it over. The crowd loved her for this specifically. Not the spectacle of her, but the generosity of her. Min arrived at 9:15. He had told himself, getting dressed, that he wasn't going. He had told himself this in the mirror with the calm certainty of a man making a rational decision. He had then driven to Bupyeong, parked and gotten out of the car. Han-suk was at the Port District, real business, and also, if Min was being fully honest with himself, a way to be here without being watched. He stood at the upper edge of the crowd and felt the room's energy move through him the way music moves through a space. Not touching him exactly, but altering everything around him. Then Cheol-soo appeared. Min clocked him in 3 seconds. Connected to a pleasure district crew operating under Hanul Syndicate's outer network. Not significant individually. Significant as a signal. Cheol-soo moved to the cipher's edge and pointed at Zaria across the circle with a gesture that had nothing to do with dance and everything to do with who this space was supposed to belong to. Zaria stepped in. What followed was real contest. Two skilled people in direct, undecorated conversation, each pushing the other higher. The crowd understood this and honored it with the kind of noise that has texture. Zaria was extraordinary. She was also clearly winning. Cheol-soo felt it. His energy tightened. And then he said something, low fast in Korean, aimed at Zaria like a small deliberate wound. The people nearest to him heard it and looked at each other. A few looked away. Min heard it from the upper edge. He was through the crowd before anything in him had finished deciding. He wasn't aware of the people moving out of his way. He wasn't aware of anything except the cipher and Cheol-soo and the distance between them disappearing. He stepped into the space. He didn't touch Cheol-soo. He stood at 4 feet and looked at him with the full concentrated stillness of a man who had, in other rooms on other nights, made decisions from which there was no return. The music kept going. The crowd went quiet in the immediate radius. That particular human silence that recognizes something primal before the mind has time to classify it. Leave, Min said. 1 syllable. Room temperature. The air around it went cold. Cheol-soo looked at him. Ran the numbers. Looked at Zaria. Looked back. Stepped backward out of the cipher and kept walking. The battle recalibrated. The crowd moved on. Zaria turned to face Min. And what was on her face was not gratitude and not anger but something precise and searching that made him aware, suddenly, of exactly what he had just done. What was that? She said. He said. I heard what he said. She cut in. Quiet. Absolute. I've heard versions of it in 3 countries. I'm still here. I was handling it. I know. You stepped in front of me, she said. In front of 200 people without being asked. Do you know what that communicates to every person in this room about what I am to you? About whether I'm capable of standing on my own floor? The understanding arrived fully and without mercy. He had moved to protect. He had done it in a way that, to every witness, looked like ownership. He had done it because something in him had reacted before anything else had a chance to speak first. You're not yourself when you're around me, she said. Not accusation. Diagnosis. The careful observation of someone who has been watching long enough to be certain. No, he said. I'm not. The honesty of it landed between them like something fragile set on a hard surface. Intact, but requiring care from here forward. Go home, she said. He went. In the parking structure, engine off, silence pressing around him. He sat and did what he almost never did. let himself feel the full weight of something without immediately moving to resolve it. He had acted from emotion in a public space in a way that damaged her, helped no one, and announced to anyone paying attention that the architect had a vulnerability. A specific one. With a name. Han-suk was awake when Min arrived home, sitting at the kitchen table with water, and the look of a man who had received a message he was still deciding how to carry. I heard about the plaza, he said. From who? Does it matter? Our people talk. Wrong people talk. Han-suk set the glass down. Cheol-su is adjacent to Hanul. If they hear the architect intervened in a plaza confrontation over a civilian woman, he stopped. It tells them where your attention lives. People who want to hurt you study exactly that. I know, Min said. So what are you going to do? Think more carefully, Min said. About all of it. At the same time. Han-suk looked at him for a long moment. She must be something. Yes, Min said. Without hesitation. Which was itself something Han-suk filed quietly, and did not forget. We're at the halfway point. And if you've stayed this long, you already know this story is different. Hit like and subscribe. The second half is where everything breaks open. Hanul moved 48 hours later. One of Meridian's warehouses in the Yonsei district found its access codes reset at 3 in the morning. Nothing taken. Nothing broken. Just locked out, with the professional precision of people who wanted to be understood rather than simply heard. Min was operational by 4:30. By 7 it was handled. Pressure applied at 2 points in the Hanul network. The message sent and received in the language both organizations spoke fluently. But Han-suk placed the timeline on the desk that morning without theatrics and said, "Look at the approval timestamp." Min looked. The surveillance gap Hanul had exploited traced back to a scheduling document Min had approved 6 days earlier in 11 minutes instead of his standard 40. He had been distracted at the time. He did not say by what. He did not need to. Pattern, Han-suk said. Not bad luck. One approval done in 11 minutes instead of 40 creates a gap. The gap is an invitation. Hanul doesn't knock. They walk through open doors. He paused. And they watch for what opens them. They know it's her, Min said. They know something changed. They don't need the name. They need the shape of it, and they have the shape. Han-suk sat down. An emotional vulnerability in a man like you is more valuable to them than a physical one. Because you've never had one before. They don't know how deep it goes. Neither do you. That's the most dangerous part. What are you asking me to do? Come back fully, Han-suk said. I'm not asking you to end anything. I'm asking you to not let it end you. Min spent the rest of that day running the tightest operational review Meridian had seen in months. Present in every room. Precise on every document. By evening, 2 of Hanul's peripheral operations were experiencing the kind of friction that reminded people of the cost-benefit analysis of overreaching. He did all of it without losing a step. And then he drove to the Bupyeong Underground Market at 9 in the evening, and sat outside it for 22 minutes. He sat with the honesty of what this meant, that after 14 hours of being the most operationally precise version of himself, the first thing that version did when the workday ended was drive here. That told him something no strategic analysis could have said more plainly. He got out of the car. She was in the corridor past the main floor, on a bench, bag beside her, taking a breath between one thing and the next. She looked up when he appeared and moved through her stages of recognition quickly. Awareness, the careful middle thing. Then settled attention. You came to apologize, she said. Yes. He sat against the opposite wall. 6 feet of corridor between them. Muffled music from the plaza. The plaza. I moved because something in me reacted before I had the chance to think. That's true and also not an excuse. Because the impact doesn't care about the intention. Did someone help you work that out? No. Alone. It took a while. She was quiet a moment. What made it hard? Admitting I wasn't thinking clearly, he said. I've built everything I have on thinking clearly. There's a version of me, the professional one, the one people in this city are careful around, that finds the idea genuinely frightening. He looked at her. You make that version go quiet. And I don't know what to do with the one that's left when he isn't talking. She looked at him carefully. You know what I am, she said, meaning herself, her history. A woman who left a stable life for a borrowed hall in a city that sometimes felt like an argument it hadn't finished having. I'm not fragile. I don't need stepping in front of. I know that now better than I knew it that night, he said. Which means that night cost me something. It cost me something too, she said. In that room. I know. A pause. I'm sorry. Not the kind that expects something back. Just the kind that's true. She sat with it. Outside, a burst of music rose then settled. You're better when you're honest, she said. Both times you've been honest, it's like someone else steps forward. Someone worth talking to. It's the same person, he said. Just the version without anything to manage. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, you can come back. He stood. At the corridor entrance he stopped. Zaria. She looked up. What you do out there, he said. It's not just skill. I've seen skilled. It looks like freedom. The real kind. The kind that costs something. She held his gaze quietly for a moment. Come back sometime, she said. I'll show you the difference between performing it and actually living it. He left. Han kallade en rot. Min answered. Tomorrow's full review, Min said. 7 a.m. Everything on the table. A pause. And? Han-suk said. And I'm going to fix something I should have fixed 2 years ago. Han-suk was quiet for exactly the right amount of time. I'll have it ready, he said. 3 weeks later, Zaria walked into his building. This detail mattered. She came to him. After 3 weeks of him coming to her. The plaza, the corridor, the careful accumulation of something neither had named. She reversed the direction. She asked at the front desk, which meant she had found the address, which meant she had looked. His staff called upstairs before doing anything else. Min said let her up in a tone that gave nothing away except that the answer was never going to be anything other than yes. She walked into the office the way she walked into the plaza, already reading the room, already at home in the reading. Nice view, she said. Thank you. She sat without waiting to be offered a seat. Something happened at the community hall. He waited. Hyunji and Kangjun, 2 of my students, followed home Thursday night after the workshop. Not confronted. Just followed. Long enough that they both knew it was deliberate. Min ran the calculation. She let him finish. Hanol, he said. That's what I thought, she said. Which means they went after teenagers who dance on Wednesday afternoons to send a message through a woman who has nothing to do with any of this. She held his gaze. Being around you has a cost. I can absorb mine. They can't. The weight of it settled in the room. He didn't manage it smaller. You're right, he said. I know. So what are you doing about it? 3 weeks ago I started restructuring Meridian, he said. Certain operations requiring my constant direct attention. I've redistributed that authority to people I trust. It's something I should have done 2 years ago and didn't, because I confused being indispensable with being in control. They're not the same. She looked at him. Why are you telling me this? Because the reason I was holding everything at maximum personal exposure was the same reason the Hanol vulnerability existed, he said. I was holding too much. Part of why is that being constantly occupied kept me from being still. Being still is where people like me discover what we're actually feeling. And what we're actually feeling can't always be managed. He looked at her. You made me be still. That's not your fault. But it is your effect. She was quiet a moment. You restructured a criminal organization because a dancer made you feel things. I restructured a poorly managed operation because a dancer held up a mirror, he said. What I did with what I saw was my choice. The first real smile crossed her face. Not performed. Arrived. Hyunji and Kongjun, she said. Returning to what mattered. Because that was exactly who she was. Hanol will receive a communication today, he said. Final. Quiet. Touching anyone connected to Pulse Unchained is a line. They know what it means when I draw one. And if they test it? They won't, he said in the tone that had never needed to explain itself. She studied him. The city moved behind the window, indifferent, luminous, enormous. I told myself you were a complication, she said. Something to be careful of. A man from a world that had nothing to do with who I am or what I came here to do. She said it honestly, without softening. And I kept finding that the edges of that weren't holding. Every time I tried to draw a clean line between your world and mine, there was already something on both sides of it. He said nothing. He knew this was not the moment for words. The night in the corridor, she said. When you apologized. You said you didn't know what to do with the version of yourself that was left when the professional version went quiet. She looked at him. I think that version might be the most honest thing about you. It might be, he said. I haven't spent much time with him. I noticed, she said. And this time the smile arrived fully. They were both standing now near the window. The city spread behind them. I have a workshop Friday, she said. I know. Don't come, she said. Not coldly, the way you protect something precious. That's mine. The plaza is open after 10. He looked at her. Come then, she said. If you want. I'll be there, he said. Bring the honest version, she said. Leave the rest in the car. She moved toward the door. He let her get almost there. Zaria. She turned. I've been running toward control my whole life, he said. Because I thought it was the only way to protect what mattered. He held her gaze. I'm starting to think that's not entirely true. She stood in the doorway and looked at him with the same quality of attention she brought to the cipher. Full, unborrowed, entirely her own. No, she said quietly. It's not. She left. Han-suk appeared 3 minutes later. The Hanol communication, Min said. This evening, Han-suk said. He paused. And the restructuring documents? Finalized before the weekend. Han-suk started to leave. Han-suk. He turned. Thank you, Min said. The large, accumulated version. 6 years of it. Han-suk held his gaze for a moment. Inclined his head. Left. That Friday after 10, Min walked into the Bupyeong Underground Market alone. No car, no security, nothing in his hands or posture announcing what he was. The plaza was alive. It was always alive here. Zaria was on the floor. She saw him arrive and didn't stop. She kept moving, kept being the conversation between herself and something the audience could only witness. He stood at the edge and watched. And for the first time since that first night on the upper walkway, the watching had nothing underneath it. No strategy. No extraction. Just presence. She came to the cipher's edge eventually and stood beside him, both of them facing the floor. You left the rest in the car? She said. I did, he said. How does that feel? He thought about it honestly because she had asked honestly. Strange, he said. Good strange. She nodded like she understood precisely. I can't control myself around you, he said. Not confession. Not defeat. Just fact. Finally, after all of it, simply fact. She turned to look at him. Then maybe, she said. You don't have to. The music kept moving. The city kept breathing. 2 people stood at the edge of a dance floor in Incheon. Not touching, not promising, not needing to do either. Just present. Arrived. in the same place at the same time, which had been where they were heading, one honest moment at a time. From the very first night he said stop and didn't know why. He knew why now. That was enough. If this story held you from the first line to the last, subscribe, hit like, and tell us in the comments. Who was really in control this whole time, Min or Zaria? We think you already know. See you in the next one.